Hey there, welcome to the Uplift. We've got a great show for you today, great cast of characters as well. Among them these, a couple compelled to help the people of Ukraine fleeing their war-torn country. What did they do to save nearly a dozen lives? We're going to get into that. Also, two young brothers who found themselves effectively homeless after their mother died. Find out how they overcame the odds. And two adopted siblings who decided to look into their ancestry and uncovered something that shocked their family. Happens to a lot of people. Plus, California wildfire survivors who now feel a kinship to Maui. And what they do? Well, they stepped up to help those affected by those devastating fires. And finally, a group of senior citizens with an affinity for murder? What the heck's that about? All of it. And more heartwarming videos, the ones you just need to see. You know what you're watching, The Uplift. Hey there, welcome to The Uplift, the show that lifts you up for at least the next 30 minutes. I would say you, and I always say me as well. Who's me? Tony DeCopel. We're going to start here with the story of two brothers who found themselves nearly homeless after their mother passed away, but thanks to a group of strangers, they found their way back home. Here's Steve Hartman.
Working at this vehicle inspection site in Katy, Texas,
Signals work.
was never part of Jalen Gray's plan. Far from it. He actually wanted to be a park ranger, but quit college and gave up the dream.
It's not a really good feeling, giving up at all, but
sometimes it's not quitting, it's just doing the right thing.
yeah, I had to do what I had to do, so.
Go, go, go!
As we first reported last year, Jalen's little brother, Julian, became his sole priority.
He's my reason.
All right, let's go.
His reason and his responsibility. Their mother, and only parent, died 3 years ago.
I just miss her so much.
From that day on, I swore, at all costs, I'm protecting them.
Unfortunately, their lives went from bad to unbearable.
Nowhere to go.
After that big freeze hit Texas a couple years ago, the pipes burst in their house, the one their mother left them, and ruined everything.
Some strange times.
Then the contractor Jalen hired to fix it took their life savings.
Tragic, isn't it?
The boys were pretty much homeless, living with their last surviving close relative, when a nonprofit called Katy Responds caught wind. The group fixes up houses after natural disasters. Over the years, they've helped more than 100 families, but few more worthy than those boys.
Yeah, it breaks your heart.
Had to help.
Had to.
Executive Director Ron Peters.
They had no idea people would want to jump in and help them.
Which may explain their speechless surprise.
I was overwhelmed.
Thanks to an army of donors and volunteers, the brothers are finally and forever back in their mother's house. Fully renovated, better than ever.
There's just so many nice people in this room right now, and it makes me so happy.
Since we first told this story, life for the boys has only gotten better. Viewers pitched in and are now paying for Jalen to go back to college to become a park ranger.
All expenses paid?
All expenses paid.
What a turn of events for you.
Yeah, I know, complete 180. This random acts of kindness helping me get there.
When their mother died, Julian and Jalen thought all they had was each other. But they were off by one whole nation.
Thank you, Steve. We're going to turn now to a group of senior citizens with a murder-related conspiracy. Here's Adriana Diaz.
At Arrow Senior Living outside Cleveland, senior citizens are conspiring about murder.
Philip had tried to kill me, Cordelia said point blank.
Dun, dun, dun. The crimes are imaginary, hatched by roughly 50 residents across several senior living centers who wrote a novel together as a way to stay engaged during the pandemic. Their story involves mysterious crimes that occur at a senior living center as soon as a handsome count moves in, wooing women and capturing everyone's attention.
It really does happen here. Did you see who just came in, and
I was struck by how dark it gets. I mean, there's strangulation, there's death by tomato soup, there are a lot of love affairs and deceit.
Yeah, I agree. It's entertaining.
Anytime something happened that was shocking, I just kind of just clapped at my computer.
Howard Simmons works at Arrow Senior Living and is the editor of the book called The Old and the Beautiful.
My grandmother loved Days of Our Lives, so knowing how just insane soap operas could be kind of lent itself to a nice collaborative story.
The seniors each wrote sections of the story that they then handed off to someone else who would then take the plot wherever they wanted.
When you're involved in writing, your characters are your babies, and someone comes along and changes it, it's hard.
How did it feel different from the other activities that you might partake in?
As opposed to a more structured, a game or playing cards, it keeps your mind active, and that's important to do as people grow older.
And it's novelty that creates those new connections in your brain.
The Old and the Beautiful, which is on shelves at the local bookstore and available online, already has a sequel. And there's a new book in the works.
What's the genre of the third book?
It's a murder, unfortunately.
And it's steamy.
Judy Flick had always dreamed of writing a book.
The other residents are walking around and go, "You wrote a book, you wrote a book," teasing me. And it's like, yeah, I did. I wrote a book, And it's a good feeling.
Sometimes dreams come true where you least expect them to.
Lovely piece, Adriana. Coming up, the wildfires in Maui had a devastating effect on animals, but people from around the country are answering the call to help. Plus, another group of people, they're inspired to help rebuild Maui because of what those folks know about what it's like to live through a wildfire. You're going to meet them after the break. The wildfires on Maui have devastated that island, destroying businesses and homes and people's lives. And the disaster also affected the animals there on the island, but people from all around the country have mobilized to help. Here's Chris Van Cleve.
He's like, I'm the boy. Even before the fire scorched Lahaina, Cheeto and Dorito needed a home.
Our kennels were completely full.
Then disaster struck. Across the island, the Maui Humane Society and volunteers came to the rescue by land, sea, and now air.
Aloha fur babies. I hope that you guys go to good, loving homes, all of you.
They partnered with the Greater Good Charities and Southwest Airlines to find a temporary home for about 150 pets in Portland, Oregon. Before boarding, each pet got a clean bill of health.
He looks good, yeah.
And vaccinations.
You need a vaccine before you can fly.
They are going to guarantee adoption areas, rescues, where they are guaranteed to find a home. So, yeah, it's really life-saving, and it takes a village.
Volunteers still work around the clock to help animals both at the shelter and back in Lahaina.
The reason why this flight is so important is because we know that we are going to be inundated with animals for months and years to come that are going to need this ongoing medical, shelter, supplies, and care and support.
A need that will keep rising. An estimated 3,000 pets are still missing.
We are seeing animals that are in complete shock. We're seeing animals that need severe pain medication to attend to, the injuries that they have.
But there are also reunions, like Roman's, back with his family after going missing during the fire.
We want people to know that there is hope through all of this, and we need people to keep the hope alive.
And sometimes hope comes with 4 legs and a tail.
Thank you very much, Chris. Back in 2018, you'll recall the Camp Fire tore through the town of Paradise, California. And over the past 5 years since then, the survivors have slowly rebuilt their lives. Well, now they're turning their attention to another paradise, disaster that is, Hawaii. Here's CBS Sacramento's Tori Apodaca.
Nearly 5 years since the Camp Fire, and empty lots like this are still all over the community. But now the town of Paradise is taking what it's learned from the trauma and rebuilds and using it to help the people living in a place known as Paradise that lost everything. Paradise lost, not once, but twice.
I had to move on from it being being a victim to being a survivor and helping my town.
Former Mayor of Paradise, Steve Crowder, knows the hurdles that come with the healing.
And any good that I can find in that experience, boy, I'm more than willing to share.
Campfire survivors now feeling a kinship to Maui, creating a Facebook group called Ohana Love, where they are answering questions from Hawaiians.
Do we let them on our property? Do we not? Who are these people? Is this a scam?
And already raising over $17,000 to send directly to the island.
The big fear that I'm hearing from the local community is the fear of gentrification.
Campfire survivors like trauma specialist Jess Mercer are helping Hawaiians process what's happening.
How to comfort someone after losing a family member.
And using the lessons learned.
Don't get so anxious that you overlook your common sense and pay somebody in advance to rebuild your house.
Paradise recognizes Maui's disaster is different.
That this is a Native community that we're mostly serving right now.
Knowing well that recovery will take time. But from one paradise to another, it will happen.
It will come back. It always does.
And a lot of people would like to help. Thank you very much for that report. Coming up in just a moment, you're going to want to stay with us and meet the adopted siblings who decided to look into their pasts and found out that they've got a connection that began before they were adopted. Plus, a couple compelled to help Ukrainians fleeing to the United States. How did these two people save nearly a dozen refugees? We'll get into that after the break. Time now for us to introduce you to a brother and sister from New York City, both adopted, and when they grew up, they started looking into their ancestry. People do that kind of thing, and that's when they uncovered some shocking details about their family tree. Here's CBS New York's Vanessa Murdoch.
And then I opened the stall and I saw this little precious thing tucked under the toilet tank and wrapped in a blanket.
Claudia, a cardiology technician, recalls the moment she first laid eyes on Vicky at Richmond University Medical Center in 2004. Vicky just days old then.
And I just scooped her up and ran to the clinic.
For the very first time Tuesday, and with Claudia by her side, Vicky visited the spot she was left, the then bathroom, now an electrical closet.
And now knowing the story, it definitely is a lot, but in a good way.
Vicky always knew she was adopted, but not how her journey began.
But for my whole life, I kind of just knew my Claudia as my mom's close friend.
Just over a month ago, she learned Claudia actually found her and cared for her until her family took her home.
Claudia has been an angel from day one.
Angela and Dennis adopted Vicky, making their family of 4 a family of 5. They had 2 boys, their biological son Nicholas and adopted son Frank. Frank was found on the steps of Bellamy's Christian Daycare in a diaper bag. CBS 2 News covered his story in 2002. Frank, too, recently learned his full story and became curious about his biology. Mom stepped in with kits from Ancestry.com.
Maybe you have some relatives in common. You're both from Staten Island.
Frank submitted his first, Vicky not long after.
I got the match that my brother had popped up as my full sibling, my biological brother.
I was driving home actually, and she called me and she was telling me, she's like, oh my God, we're biologically related. And I was like, yeah, okay, whatever, right? Little do I know that I've been living with my blood my whole life. It's insane.
For years, people would ask us, are they related? And we would say no, because we didn't know they were.
How did I miss this? Because I wasn't supposed to miss it. You know, they're my children.
We were both found a year and a half apart and wound up in the same family. The odds are insane.
And their story, beautiful.
Thank you for that. We're going to turn now to CBS Minnesota's James Preston, who takes us to a unique art gallery that you can see from the sidewalk.
In the corner of 8th and Hennepin, a display of heartfelt poetry and photography. Tell me what you see when you see this exhibit.
I see friends, I see family, I see people who I've struggled with.
A diverse group of people.
All walks of lives, all genders, all races, but there is a common thread. We have that experience with the criminal legal system.
Antonio Williams spent 14 years incarcerated in Rush City Prison.
Every year spent in prison is like a chapter ripped from the best book ever written. Even after you're released, Pieces of your life story are missing.
This poem about the last 3 years on the outside.
But the colors of love are duller. The texture of affection doesn't soothe the same.
Williams is among those featured in this exhibit on the Hennepin Theater Trust's Sidewalk Gallery.
There's a real strong marriage between social justice, social service agencies, and the arts, because there's an expression of what needs to be shared, whether it be the thoughts, the feelings, and the wants of a community.
The project is a collaboration between the Minnesota Prison Writing Workshop and We Are All Criminals, with the support of several other nonprofits, including the Waiting Room podcast with Nadine Graves.
That there are people that are in the system, outside of the system, coming home, that want to take that mic back and change that narrative and change the story that's being told about them.
Graves experienced it firsthand. A difficult childhood led to a criminal record at a young age.
I ended up leaving the state of Minnesota to be in an environment where I wasn't constantly reminded of my criminal record. Went to college, did extremely well, studied sociology and criminal justice at an HBCU, and came back to Minnesota, was able to show the courts that I had rehabilitated myself through having access and resources and tools.
The harm that I caused, now that is who I am. The system has told us that that is who we are as people, and it is not true. I'm a father. I'm someone who cares deeply about my community. I'm a homeowner.
Graves and Williams hope telling their stories will achieve change in the system and how we think about those in it.
To not be shackled by their criminal record or their past.
They're no different from our fathers, from our brothers, our sisters, our children. These are our people. And I see them.
It's a beautiful installation there. Coming up in just a moment, when these two people saw the war in Ukraine unfolding, they felt an urge to help, and they figured out how to do so. They've made a big impact, saving the lives of nearly, I had to double check this, 12 people. So how'd they do it? Find out after the break. Orhan Veli and his wife Anastasia watched the news of Russia waging a war in Ukraine and had a strong urge to do something because both of them felt a connection to what was going on. Caitlin O'Kane shows us now how they decided to help.
When Russia invaded Ukraine, countless Americans watched the images of war in horror. But for one couple, the conflict hit close to home in numerous ways. For starters, she's Ukrainian. He's half Russian. But Orhan Veli also knows all too well what it's like to be a refugee. At 11 years old, his family fled Azerbaijan and started over from scratch in the U.S.
You know, being born in a country that ends up in that kind of turmoil, right? Where I was literally one of those refugee kids that if you remember seeing in like the Syrian refugees on like Facebook, right? I was one of those kids.
His dad went from a pizza delivery driver to a business owner, running several Salad Works locations, with Orhan as his business partner. Against the odds, his family rebuilt their lives, and now they were in a position to help others do the same.
You know, that was like, yeah, of course. Having walked those shoes, it made perfect sense to want to give somebody else that opportunity too.
With an urge to help, his wife Anastasia reached out to her niece, a single mother who she became desperate to save.
Once they crossed into Poland, then the big question came, right? How do we get to America? And I contacted and actually went to visit with countless lawyers, did a lot of research, and there was literally no path to coming here quickly. Any refugee program takes years, Orhan can attest to that.
But a few weeks into the war, the U.S. opened Uniting for Ukraine, a system for people in the U.S. to sponsor Ukrainian refugees. Anastasia used that program to bring her niece over. Then they sponsored another friend and another, and eventually they had helped save 11 people. 2 of them are Anastasia's cousin Katya and her husband Sasha. They not only invited them into their home, but helped them start bank accounts, get their driver's licenses, and find jobs, things most people take for granted.
For most immigrants, or especially refugee immigrants, when you come over, it's not like you have a choice. Am I gonna work or not? Like, it's like, all right, I gotta hit the ground running and go for it.
My experience with Sasha was he landed and he was like, I don't need any time.
When do I get started?
I gotta start working.
Orhan was able to get Sasha a job at one of his Salad Works locations, and he's already moved up at the company.
And this horrible situation really has highlighted so much goodness out there that has kind of come to the surface. And I believe that probably most people think about it the same way we take on this whole situation. It's like, well, you want to help.
When Orhan moved here as a refugee, he had nothing. Now he has everything because he has the ability to give back.
I was a kid without anything. My parents had nothing, and then little by little, we were able to kind of, build that, and now have something that allows you to be able to go and help other people. It's a great little circle that fulfills.
Yeah, it did a quintessential uplift right there. And that is our show. I hope it brightened your day. I hope it lifted you up. Don't bump your head on the ceiling. Meantime, reruns, they remain free. I'm going to find some good news. See you next time.